Guadalupe Valley Municipal 2023, and I will call this meeting to order at 7:34 p.m. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Councilmember Cunningham.
Here.
Councilmember Lentz.
Here.
Councilmember Mackin.
Here.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Here.
Mayor Davis.
Here. Will the city attorney give a report out from closed session, please?
Madam Mayor, it looks like he's having technical difficulties. Oh, there he is.
I'm sorry, I was doing the research, Ingrid, sorry.
Could you please do the report out, City Attorney?
I'm sorry, I could not hear. Yes, the council met in closed session this evening on two items. One was to report out that in the identified BRE litigation, that matter has been settled within the parameters given to the council, given by the council to the city attorney previously. On the other matter, the council provided direction to staff about a possible stay with High Speed Rail Authority. There will be further details to follow if that is agreed to. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to adoption of the agenda. Do I have first and a second?
I'd like to remove item G, please, from the consent calendar.
Do we just do that at consent? You want to remove it fully off of?
Oh, you're right. Okay, yeah, let's do it when we do consent.
I would like to close in memory of Dan Sorrentino.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And with that, I would give a motion to adopt the agenda.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Cunningham.
Aye.
Councilmember Lentz.
Aye.
Councilmember Mackin.
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
And Mayor Davis.
Aye. Item B, awards and presentations. Proclaiming May as Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. I will go ahead and read a proclamation at this time. May 2023 as Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. Whereas during Asian American and Pacific Islander AAPI Heritage Month, our city recognizes the innumerable contributions, vibrant cultures, and rich heritage of Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders in our communities. And whereas Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders are the second largest ethnic group in the city of Brisbane at 32%, and the fastest growing racial group in the United States. And whereas, according to the Federal Asian Pacific American Council, FAPAC, the theme for AAPI Heritage Month 2023 is Advancing Leaders Through Opportunity, encouraging the advancement of leaders in local and national governments by prioritizing collaboration, development, diversity, transparency, and inclusion through leadership training of Asian American Pacific Islander people. And whereas, as we celebrate Asian American and Pacific Islander communities, we must also redouble our commitment to combating the surge of anti-Asian hate crimes and commemorate the victims who have been lost to anti-Asian violence during the pandemic and throughout history. And now, therefore, be it resolved that the City Council of the City of Brisbane hereby recognizes May 2023 as Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month in the City of Brisbane. We call upon all community members to learn more about the history of Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders, and to observe this month supporting local programs and activities. We have Diane Oseto from Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Accountability Committee to accept the proclamation.
Honorable Mayor and Council members, I am Diana Oseto, a member of the Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Accountability Committee. It is an honor to receive the proclamation for the Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. It is great to see our city leaders in support of the importance of recognizing the diversity in our community and also understanding the importance of inclusion. On Saturday, May 20th, from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. at the Community Park Gazebo, we will hold an Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month celebration. This is the first of a series under the umbrella of hashtag #WeAreBrisbane to show unity and showcase the diversity in our city. There will be dancing, singing, martial arts, demonstrations, and delicious appetizers and desserts from our local restaurants. We will be unveiling the We Are Brisbane shirts and selling them for $20. Hope to see you all on May 20th. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane, for your service to the City of Brisbane. And I will go ahead and give you this proclamation. You can approach. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane.
Does
for all your
Caroline
work.
want a photo?
Sure.
Okay. Maybe should I come down or the whole council? Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I have another proclamation to give this evening, and that is proclaiming May as Wildfire Preparedness Month. Wildfire Preparedness Month 2023 proclamation is as follows. Whereas in California, over 2 million homes are at risk of wildfire, and whereas last year there were 7,490 wildfires that burned 362,455 acres across the state, and whereas 90% of all wildfires are human caused, human acts of carelessness result in wildfire disasters every year. And whereas each year more people move into wildland urban interface areas, increasing the need to raise awareness to our citizens on how they can protect their property from wildfire losses. And whereas Zone Haven has been adopted as a countywide tool to assist with informed evacuations during wildfire, and we encourage know your zone before an emergency arises. And whereas the North County Fire Authority encourages fire-safe behavior by all who live, work, and recreate throughout the city of Brisbane. And whereas each of us can do our part to prepare for wildfire emergencies by taking steps to make effective changes to our homes and landscapes to reduce the risk of wildfire. And now, therefore, I, Madison Davis, Mayor of the City of Brisbane, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim May 2023 as Wildfire Preparedness Month and encourage all Brisbane residents to increase their knowledge and awareness of proper safety measures to protect themselves from the devastating effects of wildfires. And we have a member of North County Fire Authority here who will accept the proclamation.
Madam Mayor, City Council members, thank you all. On behalf of everyone here at North County Fire, I would like to thank you all for your continued support on raising wildfire awareness throughout the community. I would also take this time to encourage everyone to attend our Wildfire Awareness Day, May 6th, Saturday, May 6th, from 10 a.m. to 1 at the Brisbane Community Park. There will be joint communication between North County Fire, Brisbane Police Department representatives of Fire Safe San Mateo County, and the California Department of Insurance, where we'll be discussing topics of defensible space, home hardening, Ready, Set, Go, Zone Haven evacuation zones, and San Mateo County AC alerts. Through continued collaboration, we can all do our part to increase fire safety and raise wildfire awareness throughout the community of Brisbane. Thank you.
Thank you. I will bring this proclamation down to you and I will take another phone.
Yeah, you know, I do have a quick question for you, though.
Sure.
So May 6th is going to be at the community center, at the community park, right, at the gazebo? Okay, so, you know, I've gotten a couple of responses from constituents. Their property insurance, homeowners insurance, excuse me, has gone up significantly, right? And so they're asking, okay, well, you know, what are the things that we can do? And you mentioned that there's going to be representatives from the insurance industry there, correct?
Correct.
So, okay, so then if people want to get a better understanding of why their rates have gone up significantly, I know for our own insurance, it went up 24% last year. It went up, I think, 44% this year, right? And so it's just, you know, and yeah, so if that can be addressed at that workshop that you're having, or those types of conversations can be had, that would be great.
Sure. I can't speak on behalf of the California Department of Insurance, but what I can do is divert. There will be a member of the California Department of Insurance present who can better assist you with that. There's also going to be flyers and pamphlets and handouts that they have available. Unfortunately, throughout the state, that I'm sure the entire state is echoing the same feelings you're having on insurance. But I would divert all questions to the California Department of Insurance and each insurance agency specifically. I will tell you that some of the things you can do that may assist your insurance is going into the home hardening aspects where you make your home more wildfire resilient. And we will have information on those topics as well at the community event.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And I didn't catch your name.
Oh, I'm Ryan Adams. I'm one of the fire prevention officers with North County Fire.
Okay, Ryan.
My partner is out on a last minute uninspected event.
Clyde.
Clyde Preston.
Okay.
He's been the fire inspector over the city of Brisbane for a number of years. So I'm here on his behalf and in his absence. And I'll leave my card and my info in the back if you need anything from me. Feel free to reach out.
All right, thank you, Ryan.
Thank you. Perfect. That's probably better. Thank you so much. Absolutely. Thank you.
We will now move on to oral communications number 1. This is for items not on the agenda. I do have one slip at the moment, and it's for Carrie Mossing.
Thank you. Mayor, council members, I just wanted to stop by and say hello. I'm the new manager of the Brisbane Library just up the hill. So I just wanted to see your smiling faces and have you seen mine, and highlight just a few events that we've got coming up this month. So this Sunday, May 7th, we have an event on beekeeping and bee preservation, which I think will be of interest to folks who are environmentally conscious. On Wednesday, May 17th, we have an event for youth about nutrition and intuitive eating, sort of amplifying some mental health efforts. On Thursday, May 18th, we've got an author story time. It's an Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month event with Vivian and Eugenia, who wrote This Is Not My Home, a picture book about, well, I won't go into it, but you can see more on the library website or stop by and ask about it. We're excited to join the We Are Brisbane AAPI Heritage Month celebration in the park on May 20th. Also on May 20th, a little later in the day, we've got a Master Gardeners program about soil and seeds and growing nutritious vegetables, and there will be a seed swap at that event. And then Sunday, May 21st, we'll have a bicycle safety inspection clinic in celebration of Bike to Your Library weekend. You do have to register for that one, so stop by and we can help you with that.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, I do have a quick question. So I know that the county representative who came before us with the fentanyl presentation had reached out to Mohini about establishing some kind of ability to provide Narcan for fentanyl overdoses and things like that. And so I was, you mentioned you have the one event on May 17th and kind of talking about nutrition and mental health. And do you have any update on where that?
I don't have any update on that particular item. I can say we are involved right now in a concerted effort to train all of our staff in mental health first aid, which is also related. I can certainly look into that.
Yeah,
but
it's
I don't
about
have
distribution. Being
Okay.
able, people could go there and get it.
Madam Mayor,
Okay.
if I may.
Thanks.
Cliff, that would have to go through the JPA and Anne Marie at the county to even discuss using Narcan at the libraries.
I appreciate the information. So this was a request from the county to make a connection with our representatives at our local library. So if that's the case, then so be it. But yeah, I was just following up on that because that's an important issue for our constituents in our town,
Maybe
which I
you
know you
can.
appreciate.
Maybe you can leave your card. I don't want to stray too far off of our agenda because this is public comment, so we can't get into too much of a discussion here. But maybe you could leave your card for Councilmember Lentz, and he might be able to follow up with you directly.
Happy to.
If that's okay.
Thank you
You
very
can give it
much.
to Ingrid, and then she can pass it along.
Wonderful.
Thank you. Okay, City Clerk, do we have anyone else wishing to speak at this time?
No, Madam Mayor.
Okay, so we will now move on to the consent calendar. I need to remove item H. Councilmember Lentz has expressed needing to remove item G. Are there any other items that you would like to remove?
No, it's just that one.
Anyone else?
No, I'll make a motion to approve consent items D, E, F, I, J, and K.
I'll second that.
Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Cunningham,
Aye.
Councilmember Lentz,
Aye.
Councilmember Mackin,
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell,
Aye.
and Mayor Davis.
Aye. Okay, Cliff?
All right, thank you. So, I had reached out to Clay. I just wanted to get, some information in regards to why the amount that's being paid is less than what we've received in the past. And so, yeah, if we could maybe have just a little dialogue. Okay. Carolina. All right, Carolina.
Thank you.
So, yeah, if you wouldn't mind providing us maybe just a quick staff report, and then I'll ask some questions, or I can just ask questions now, whatever you feel comfortable
I would
with.
just ask the questions, maybe.
Okay, so Carolina, so I know that in 2019 we had another election in regards to taxing liquid fuel, and but we changed the kind of makeup of how we tax that particular item, and so the amount that we received in 2020 was 400,000, and that is the maximum. But then it went down significantly in 2021. It went back up a little bit in 2022 and a little bit more in 2023. So you have this 338,000. But when the council back in, I guess it was 2014, we anticipated over a certain amount of years that it would go up to the 400,000, and that would be the amount that we would receive. So there's like this expected amount, of getting that 400,000 for, from that particular tax. But the last 3 years, it's been under that. And so if you could talk a little bit about that, please.
Sure. So this liquid storage, or its fuel storage, was heavily impacted by the travel industry in the sense of when flights during COVID, there was not, there was a restriction in travel, and so that went down. So that was what we knew was the initial decline. We have contacted and reached out actually to Kinder Morgan to get a better feel for when do they expect to go back, if at all, and trying to get some projections for the next 5 years. So we did reach out to them. I'm still waiting to hear back for that component. But we are aware of the initial decrease. There was less travel, less even from fuel, from driving.
Sure.
And so we're trying to determine if there's an impact from folks converting from fuel to electric car, which could be part of the issue. So, but we want to get a better answer from them.
Okay. And is it possible to get like say a fairly detailed understanding of that rather than just like, hey, here's what we're going to pay you, right? I mean, I don't know what kind of numbers they give you and if there's some kind of detailed breakdown, but I think it would be helpful, just to have greater transparency in how we receive this money from them.
So yes, they actually do give us detailed by day as far as the amounts of barrels that are being calculated.
Okay. And so, we had the election in 2019. How long does that last until there would have to be, say, another election? Or is it just something that rolls over all the time? The only reason we had the election the last time was because we made some changes?
I think it's in perpetuity.
That's what I understand.
In perpetuity. Okay. Okay. So then that $400,000 cap just is in perpetuity.
I think, at some point in the future, the city may want to look at and going back and adjusting that. But, that's probably a future day.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, having 3 years in a row of being kind of like under kind of expectations, I think we should evaluate that. That makes sense. I'm fine with this, with what we have, just, going forward.
Right. And that's why we asked for not only comparison to the last years, but looking for projection for future to get a better understanding of where they're expecting to be and how that will come to what those would result for us as well.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions or comments about item G?
I would, Madam Mayor, I would just mention from Peninsula Clean Energy in reference to what you talked about, the electric vehicle adoption in San Mateo County has been really, really high compared to other counties. So we're going to see that figure go down. It's the direction it's going to go. Thank you.
Okay, so do I have a motion to
I'll make a motion to approve item G.
Second.
roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Cunningham.
Aye.
Councilmember Lentz.
Aye.
Councilmember Mackin.
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
And Mayor Davis.
Aye. So item H, I will be recusing. Although the city has no discretion over the rates that South San Francisco Scavenger implements, I don't want any misimpression about my role with the chamber and their involvement on my board. So I will recuse and leave the room, and Mayor Pro Tem O'Connell will do this item.
Thank you. That brings us to item H, which is approve the solid waste collection rate adjustment, South San Francisco Scavenger Company. And do we need a staff report, or do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
I'll second.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Cunningham.
Aye.
Councilmember Lentz.
Aye.
Councilmember Mackin.
Aye.
And Mayor Pro Tem O'Connell.
Aye. Thank you. We'll ask
Okay.
Mayor to come back in now.
Okay. We'll now proceed to new business item L. Receive mid-year fiscal year 23 budget report and consider adoption of resolution to amend the fiscal year 2022/2023 budget. Staff report, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just waiting for, oh. Are we going? Yeah, thank you. Okay, I wanted to provide an update to the budget for fiscal year 22-23. So next slide. First of all, just wanted to give a background of when the budget was prepared. Just a reminder that it was back in April 2022, so we were still coming out of COVID. City Hall was reopened to the public in July 21, but closed again in January due to various surges. And so the City Hall and programming for the city was gradually ebbing and flowing according to how the COVID response was and with the surges. So there were still lots of unknowns at the mid-year review of last year when we were doing about the time we were preparing the budget, which included a lot of cost increases due to shipping shortages and again, still with COVID impact. Next slide. So the expectations at the time were revenue of 21.8 million, with the largest impact was for TOT, where we did expect a slight increase by 400,000. And then the other impacts were sales tax returning to pre-COVID levels, so we increased it to 5.5 million. Property tax with a slight increase to 5.3 million. And then at the time, we dropped permitting and park and recreation fees. So for that category overall, we dropped it to 1.5 million, again, considering the impact of COVID. At the time, we budgeted 25 million of expenditures. Which was an increase from the prior year because we had resumed our position recruitments as they were frozen the year prior. We had increase in technology project cost, where we had added not only the infrastructure upgrade cost, but also a plan to have a process improvement review. And then we also added the lease cost for City Hall Annex. So that had increased the expenditures from the prior year. Next slide. Moving to actual, however, we found that our revenues were favorable by a little over $4 million. And the biggest uptick had to do with the permitting and park and recreation fees because we actually increased there. A lot of it had to do with the Sierra Point activity build-outs, but also park and recreation actually had an opening earlier than was expected when we had budgeted. Even though there were some, closures or minimized program in certain parts of the year, because overall it opened earlier, it impacted the overall revenue. And then for TOT, we had an increase to 1.7 million. And that was where we were seeing that the vacancies were actually dropping. So there was a gradual rebound to the TOT, to the hotel travel industry. And the property tax, there was a growth in the successor agency property tax, again, because of Sierra Point. And so that increased our overall property tax to $5.6 million. Sales tax is, we're expecting up to $6.4 million. Part of it, or not, we just want to make sure that we understand that the county pool had a spike in prior year, but now we're back down to 3%. However, the construction industry and mechanical equipment industry, which contribute, they're one of the top 5 businesses that contribute to sales tax here in Brisbane. Those industries remain strong. And so we're able to maintain those levels for the sales tax. We're also including in this actual projection the new use tax, which begins this quarter. We don't know, obviously, what it's going to provide for us, but we've included in the projection a quarter's worth of the sales tax, or use tax rather, sorry, that we had indicated when we sent out that proposition for vote. Okay, moving on. As far as expenses, we're seeing that we're having savings in overall, and in most of the departments. We had delayed raises in that the MOUs didn't go into effect or were finally agreed upon in December as opposed to in July of last year. We also had some open positions that weren't filled, even though we had open recruitment again, but they just weren't filled. And then there was some COVID impact to some of the programming when we did minimize some of, or limit some of the programs. So through that, we did see some savings. However, we do want to request some additional items to add to the budget this year. And with those requests of $560,000, it would bring the projected expenses up to $25.6 million. And those requests are the LIRA transfer, the co-sponsorship. Those two were actually discussed during the time of the budget. Unfortunately, as we were converting to a new program for budgeting, those were excluded, even though they were discussed. And we apologize that they were not included in the original number, but we do want to make sure that they are part, or we want to make sure we provide you the opportunity if you'd like to include. And so the LIRA transfer is $75,000 as a request, which is consistent with prior year. We've been averaging, or for this year, we're looking at about between 48 to 50,000 that will be used, but 75 remains flat from prior year. And then co-sponsorship, it was already presented at $20,000. We're asking for an additional transfer for the vehicle fund of $465,000, which represents the first payment made for a fire truck that we committed, that council had committed to purchase, and the order has been made. We made the first payment. At the time, the discussion for the purchase of this truck, there were discussions on how to cover and whether we wanted to use another fund. Staff is recommending that we go ahead and use it from the general fund. And we will revisit the vehicle funding at the time of the budget preparation. If those are agreeable to council, the summary would be revenues, it's $26,244,000. It is an increase in budget, again, $4.4 million. And then expenditures at $25 25,013,882 is slightly over budget as well. However, even with an increase in the budget for those items requested, because the revenues exceeded or expected to exceed the budget, we are now, instead of use of funds, we are expecting a slight surplus. At the time, we had budgeted for a use of funds of 3 million, and instead we're looking at slight surplus, just shy of $1 million. With that, adding to our actual beginning fund balance, which we just finished our audit, we received our reporting, and we landed in 2022 with a fund balance of $15,200,290 in the general fund. So with the surplus, we would end with a reprojected fund balance at $15,870,685. And just to note that that amount is not fully available because we do have some restrictions on those funds, but that's what the ending funding balance would be projected. Moving to the next slide is the list of the fund balance policy items that we include. The first is the recession reserve at 2.5 million, an unanticipated events reserve at 3.5 million. And then we also have a third category, which is 5% of the revenue plus 5% of the expenditures combined is what we want to hold back in the reserve. So the total of those three is 8.6 million. And so with additional restrictions carrying forward of 6.4, that would leave available to us $879,777. And so next slide. What we're hoping to do with those savings is, first, we would like to pay into the pension trust. What we do every year is, instead of paying for the unfunded liability on a monthly basis, if we pay it up front at the beginning of the year, there's a savings that CalPERS will give us. And so we take opportunity to do that. And we would like to take those savings and give it to the trust and make that contribution. And that would help us reach the goal that we've set for the pension trust a little more quickly. The second item we're requesting is that anything that's remaining, just to leave and consider for 23-24. And that is because there are some uncertainties that we'll talk about in the next slide. But we think pull it over and have the opportunity for council to discuss further when we're reviewing the budget. And finally, we're recommending that you approve the budget adjustments that we've brought forth in the attached resolution to address the areas of largest fluctuation. The next slide is we would always like to give an update on where we are with our debt. And for the governmental funds, we have 10.9 million on the books that will be paid out through 2042. We have one loan that is actually will be paid off this year in fiscal year 23. So that we have 382 remaining, so that'll fall off. So the rest you'll see over those years presented, and again through 2042. Next slide. So the items to consider for next year and why we wanted to hold over anything. We do have committed employee contracts to include annual raises through 2026. The hotel sector recovery, it's still shy of COVID. We have been in discussion with our sales tax and fiscal consultants, and I understand there's some discussion with the hotel industry as far as still not recovering fully pre-COVID, and so with some still uncertainty over the next 2 years. Level of inflation, we saw rates going up like 10 times pretty much since last year. And so there's an unknown impact on what that'll do to cost for supplies, what it does to the industries of construction, various industries that are impacted by not only the fluctuation in rates, but just how it will impact inflation all around. There is still continued construction on Sierra Point, and so although that can bring revenue to us, the timing is not always clear because of how it rolls onto the property tax rolls, the timing. But then you could see the expense side go up as we have to deal with permitting and those costs of reviews and how that impacts our building and community development expenses, and also some of the public work expenses. So there is that impact, but the timing isn't always one-to-one. There's a delay on one side or the other. The PERS unfunded liabilities, with the change in the rates, if CalPERS does not meet its targets, and if it's the return is lower than what they're targeting, that means the cost is higher for us as an agency. So again, with the rates going up and the Treasury rates going up, there is a different impact depending on the portfolio that CalPERS has in their investments. And then last is just an impact of costs related to the office expansion, including debt, which we will be discussing at a future meeting. But it is definitely something to consider for 23-24. And with that, happy to take questions.
Does council have any questions?
If I may, on the unfunded PERS liability, do we have any idea of what, has there been any word sent out from PERS or educated guesses on how that's going to affect the city's contribution at this point? Or are they keeping it close to their chest?
They are having updates, but they haven't released for us. So we're waiting to see for our next reporting.
But just like the banks who have investments that are at a lower rate, with their long-term bonds, PERS can be affected that way also and not meet their rate of return.
I'd have to look at their portfolio breakdown, but they haven't released. It's information that they'll share I'm sorry, I'm trying to find the word. It is very projected in the sense of what to expect for the coming year.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Yes.
Yeah, and I do too.
Oh, I think we'll have Councilmember Mackin and then Councilmember Lentz.
Okay. Thank you, Carolina, very much. First of all, the slide of the outstanding debt, that was not included in the staff report that we received. Could you send that to each of us?
Sure.
I'd appreciate that. And then there were a couple things in this report under the fund balance and summary. Expected increase in anticipated costs for the city. Could you just give us a brief explanation? What are these anticipated costs?
For fund balance?
Yes, it's on page 57. under fund balance and summary, the last sentence.
The use and transaction tax?
Yes.
Okay, so that is the,
So is there any one thing specifically? Is it in general? Is it having to do with we've hired more people? Is it?
oh, okay, I'm sorry. Yes, so that, again, that has to do with the anticipated cost for the city. As we talked about, the commitments that we had for staff as far as the MOU going up, and then also with the costs across the street. If we don't get funding from, if we don't have debt for the fund, yeah, I got it. And then if we don't get funding for that section, then that's going to be all costs to the city. But as far as the first part for the use and transaction tax, we don't fully know what that is yet because it was a projection and it's only a quarter that we're actually going to see, but we haven't actually seen any of it yet.
Right,
Because it's just
understood.
starting. But even after a quarter, it won't happen as far as for historical or for trying to get some kind of trend. It could actually take more than 6 months.
Sure.
to-
And businesses have been closed and some of them, and people starting to buy, and some things are not available.
Right.
Supply chain problems, so anything can happen. Pretty
And,
much.
right, and whether it's the sales tax for Bradley Burns, which is what we've already been receiving, is very different from this new tax because the local agency tax is mostly driven by the destination of the product, whereas Bradley Burns, it's where it's originating.
Right.
So it's very different, especially because of the size of our city. We have to keep that into consideration. So that's the first part. But then the cost to the city, as we were discussing, and then the speed of recovery, again, for the use tax, like you mentioned, and what we were implying was, if they're not experiencing the increase in their sales products, then we won't see that
Exactly.
increase. Yeah.
Right, okay. And then the same page, I'm looking at atmospheric river storms.
Yes.
And it talks about how we're seeking federal aid to reimburse the costs. I'm sure some of these costs we won't even see right away because I'm sure our Public Works Director, we've dealt with the immediate problems, and I'm sure there's more ongoing. It's like, this is not an emergency, so we'll do it as we can. But something that caught my eye here was, and mitigation to upgrade the storm drain system. What kind of money are we talking about? Do we know? Do we know what needs to be done? It doesn't have to be tonight. When would this be done? I'm just curious whether this is going to hit this year, next year, just some idea.
So that is the removal of the debris flow sediment that made it into the storm drains.
Okay.
So shortly after we finished cleaning the streets, we hired a company that had a specialized CCTV that had the capability to go down storm drain pipes and negotiate it. And it's shocking how much debris we have in there. Some of the pipes are more than half full. We're estimating it to be over $1 million.
Wow.
And the scarier part for me right now is that for many of the roads, they are on what's called the emergency relief system that's managed by the Federal Highway Administration. So we're applying to them, but we haven't yet got that readback that says, well, yes, we'll cover the road, but we'll definitely cover the storm drains under the road too. So at the same time as we're applying to FHWA through our friends at Caltrans, we're also applying to FEMA for the same system. And we haven't started that work yet because it's in excess of $1 million. But that doesn't mean we don't have to do it, because we would have trouble getting through another major storm like we had with all of that debris in there.
So the immediacy would be next January.
Yes, I would love to get it done before we had the next series of storms coming in. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then a mid-year budget report, is there any chance we could get this earlier in the year? Because we're 2 months before the end of our fiscal year. So I really appreciate having it now, but is there a way that maybe next year we could actually move that up a little sooner?
Yes, definitely is the goal to get it to you earlier in the year.
And I'm not trying to criticize because I don't know all the challenges that you've had this year dealing with this. And it's kind of been an unusual year. And also, what I think would be really helpful to me, I know I had asked Clay about this, is there's a lot of things we're dealing with, and we say, well, what if do we have money for this or for that? Is there a way we could get something like a statement of activity for each fund? And by that, I mean like a year to date, maybe if it was only through March 31st, and it would show budgeted amounts through that date, say March 31st, also maybe any variances that came about. And if we could show the income by the source of revenue, so we see where it's coming from, that's actually very meaningful. And then line items of the type of expenses. So we don't need to see every line item expense, but the type. And do each of these by fund. So we can see, we had a budget last year. Where are we at now? Did we expend? Where did we incur more expenses? That would be really, really meaningful for, I think, many of our subcommittees were operating a bit in the dark mid-year. Because we say, well, we think we have money, oh, maybe we don't. And your report indicates some funds did better than others. Some had a lot of unanticipated expenses. Public Works, great example right there.
I'm sorry, are you referring to the funds? Because we're looking at general fund here. So are you referring to maybe departments?
Yes,
Okay.
I'd like to see for each different fund, because we've got Marina Enterprise, we've got Parks and Rec, just all the different funds, what the budgeted amount was, and the activity. So that would be up to a certain point. You could cut it off wherever is easiest, March, so that we kind of have an idea mid-year. How close are we to the programs and also the revenues that we anticipated? So we don't end up looking at that at the end of the year for each one and saying, well, this is what we did. I think it might be helpful to have that mid-year. So I'm not sure if that's available yet, that we could put that together. I'm not trying to give you a ton of work. But
No,
with
that's
things that we're working on, I think it might be very helpful.
It's information.
Year-to-date budget?
Yes, and she could cut it off in March even.
Yeah, instead of overall annual budget, just year-to-date, like.
Just year-to-date.
That information is available every month. We have to,
Sure.
as far as our reporting. So we
But a
could work with
summary.
something of some kind of summary for you.
Right. Because the payment register, we can see every month what's going on, but we're not seeing it in relation to the budget, and we're not seeing it compared to revenues.
Yes.
It's sort of a departmental
Right.
Yes.
overview that I think would be helpful, where we could see what departments, how they're doing. I know that in the past that our budgets have not been, in our budgeting process, we don't say that if a department doesn't use all of their funds, that means they're going to be underfunded or overfunded the next year. And we've never done it that way, but it's a good indicator of how the budget and the programming is going and where specific needs may be coming up. So,
And it enables us to sometimes look at things differently, where we go, oh, this isn't what we expected, and maybe we will prioritize differently, or we need to be mindful of certain things that we didn't anticipate.
And further to that, I'm thinking about, what's before Randy and the Public Works crew.
Exactly.
And, I am assuming it's monumental. And I was thinking about the drains, and I know nothing about drainage, that, that must be a huge expense that we're facing. And I think if we knew it and the community knew, and when we get to say, no, we can't do some other things, we have to prioritize this as a public safety thing, that might help us with our priority budgeting. We might have to make some shifts, maybe. I mean, who was expecting December 31st?
And so,
And
Madam
then
Mayor,
we're not looking in the rearview mirror when we come to the next budget. We already kind of have some idea where we're at. So we don't have to then play catch up and look backwards. We kind of are looking at it as we go along.
So, Clay, do you want?
yeah, so we do that on a staff level. So I think you're asking for us to bring that to the council and have you take a look at it, and that's fine. It is going to be a little bit more work, because just to look at actuals and not understand what's coming later on in the year is meaningless information, and the departments know that. So there is a little bit of a lift here for us to do that. More than happy to do it. And I'll sit down with Carolina and we'll kind of try to figure out timing for that. Like when you look at the revenue side, there are different revenues that come in at different times during the year. So it's not, we're not like on a linear, month by month sort of thing. And you have to understand all that. But we could certainly look at trying to provide a more meaningful mid-year report that is more departmentally based. We don't actually really have that many funds. We have the general fund, we have the Marina fund, we have the utilities. Do we have?
You might want to do.
Yeah,
You may want to do a column, actual, and then year-to-date budget.
Yeah,
and then maybe one that's annual budget. So you can see, like, it'll be easy to see, oh, there's a lot coming in, or oh, we're this part of the year and we've already spent this much, but then projected or was supposed to be year-to-date budget, you're like, oh, well, it's on track, even though it looks like we're already at the maximum. This is where we budget the maximum to be at this point in the year anyway.
and I will tell you, at least in terms of the general fund, almost historically, we always spend less money than we budget.
Mm-hmm.
It's usually, there's a percentage, I think it's usually 2 to 3%, I think.
Yeah,
We've
that
had that
range,
conversation over the years. Revenues are a little bit more volatile.
Yeah.
But the expenditure side, we can manage pretty well. And each department does that, and they're responsible to, do that within budget. If they want to go, they have an expenditure that's going to go outside of what they're budgeted, they have to go through a process to get that approved. So there's internal controls on all that. And of course, all of it ultimately gets reported in the audit.
Sure.
So
I
but
think
we'll work on that.
I think we all endeavor to be very educated decision makers, and this gives us some tools. Because yes, we rely on staff, but then it's sometimes a big catch-up for us, where we're going through a big staff report and you're trying to absorb it. And we do a lot of work in subcommittees, and this information will be very valuable in subcommittees and planning. Thank you. So if we could have that this year, that would be great.
This fiscal year, or you're saying just the 2023?
2023.
Yeah. Okay. So we're almost there. Councilmember Lentz,
I don't want to give any false expectations.
Yeah.
I don't think we can do that in this fiscal year.
that's what I'm saying. That's why I got clarification.
Okay,
I don't
okay.
think we're expecting that.
Okay.
Because that's where, we're there. So,
Yeah.
Well,
okay.
yeah,
Because you said
the
this year, so I want to
projection,
make sure there's
yeah.
clarification there around that. Councilmember Lentz, question?
You're all done with your questions, Colin?
Yes.
All right, cool. So Carolina, thank you for the presentation. Much better to be, having a surprise if you're
Better.
up 4 million rather than the opposite direction. Looking at the page, I think it's 59. Maybe I need glasses, getting older. So looking at the required reserve. So, for fiscal year 2021, right, is it basically 8.5.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we were doing the budget, we were concerned that, okay, yeah, we're, in order to pay for the things that we've budgeted for, we're going to have to go into the reserves, right? And here we are, fiscal year 22-23, and the reserves are 8.6, so basically $100,000 more. So when we were looking at going into the reserves, it was that was a projected, we're going to have to do it. In the end, we didn't have to do that because we had this additional money come in. So is that clear?
That's correct.
That is correct.
That is correct. So if we're, for the last few years, we were budgeting that you would have to dip in because of the uncertainty of those revenues. But in COVID year, we actually did better than a lot of other surrounding cities. And so that was one of the main reasons for sales tax purposes. We did better. Sorry, it was specifically sales tax. We did better than most agencies around for COVID, that it allowed us to cover the expenses that we had. And we had enough, on the flip side, you had enough savings on expenses with the increase in revenue that we didn't have to dip.
Got it. Okay.
And so, and then that'll also, depending on the expense and the revenues, that will also impact that third reserve requirement because of the fluctuation. That's going to always change depending on where you land in your actuals.
Okay.
Councilmember Lentz, do you mind if I do a follow-up question on that
absolutely.
specifically?
Yeah, no, sure.
So for the fiscal year 20/21, that surplus, that was kind of like a once in a bloom. It's not replicable necessarily because the sales tax generators are not here anymore. So it's not like
Correct.
we got lucky.
Yeah.
Basically.
It was it was a good year because of that, and then one of the main drivers was a business that had a lot of online sales. But when they left the city, that left a hole for us.
Right.
Yeah.
And is that why we see part of why we see that decline?
In sales tax, correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, and overall, it's going to
Overall.
impact your revenue.
For 2021, 2022.
Yeah.
Okay, continue.
Okay. So, and then, let's see. You know, in the LIRA transfers. So I'm glad that you're recommending keeping the $75,000 in it, and the $40,000 to $50,000 that did get spent. That was part of the water and sewer. Subsidizing. Was that part of that? Is that LIRA program, or do I have a different?
No, the LIRA program is the low income rate assistance for the water and sewer, because for water and sewer, because those are enterprise funds, they cannot allow for any one group to subsidize another group's water rate or water usage and the cost that, or the billing that the customers pay. So the general fund has been applying this program, making it available so that we could offer discounts to low-income households. Yeah. And if they qualify for the PG&E Care program, then they could have the discount for the water and sewer program here for LIRA, through LIRA. But again, it's a general fund that is the one funding that contribution or that program, I should say.
Yes. And so, when we were doing our water and sewer rate increase and we said, okay, 25%, and that was going to be like $40,000. Of course, we don't know what the need's going to be.
Correct.
So if the need exceeded the $40,000 and we have $75,000 budgeted, we could tap into that. So it could be more than 40, but not above 75.
Right. Because then you would need to request another transfer from the general fund.
If it was above 75.
Correct.
Okay.
So I think the reason that 75 is showing on an increase is that it was left off in the software system. We had budgeted 75,000, but it never appeared in the budget. So that's why it's being added into this mid-year review, because while we've been spending that money,
we've allocated it and
Right.
spent 40
we
to 50.
never allocated it. We've been spending the money and it never showed it up in our original budget that we passed.
That is true, right?
Yeah,
I always thought that we did budget that.
We intended
We
to, it
intended
didn't
to.
show up.
You did, we just didn't get it in the document.
Okay,
So we've
so
always
officially we
had,
did do it, it just wasn't in the document.
Right.
Okay, yeah.
Yes.
Yes, and that isn't what I'm saying. I'm just making a point that, we got this money.
Okay.
And that's good for those folks that could need it. And we don't know what the need's going to be once the new rates, roll out. And it could be, the need could be higher than the 40,000 or so that we've been giving out. At least we got it up to 75.
Because the rates don't kick in until June 15th in
Later,
the next fiscal
yes.
year, we're not even having that proposal before you as far as what amount you would like. What based off of the current usage and to stay consistent with prior year, we're recommending the 75,000.
That sounds good. Thank you. All right, that's it.
Any other questions? Okay, do I have a first and a second to adopt the resolution to amend the fiscal year 2022 to 2023 budget?
so moved.
Second?
Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Cunningham,
Aye.
Councilmember Lentz,
Aye.
Councilmember Mackin,
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell,
Aye.
and Mayor Davis.
Aye. We'll now move on to item N, review of Marina Enterprise Funds, Sierra Point Lighting and Landscaping District, and Park Planning and Development Funds. Do I have a staff report, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Me again.
You're popular this evening.
Well, first of all, I want to thank a few folks that helped put this information together because a lot of this activity predates me from when I've been in the city. I want to thank Randy Bro, our city engineer, Karen Kinzer, also from Public Works, who helped fill in some of the gaps and added some color to some of the information that I was gathering. And then Rose Valia, who is our senior management analyst who helped with some of the slides. So starting with we were asked to give a financial overview of the Sierra Point area in talking about some of the various funds that address that area, how the revenue comes in and what kind of expenses occur. So with that, you will see a map on the screen that this is the area covered by the Marina Fund on the very right. The green areas are the Sierra Point Lighting and Landscaping Districts maintained around the area. And it is for public use, which butts up to many of the private properties. And then to the left of the marina is you'll see like a striped bluish area. That is city-owned land. And within there is parcel R, which we will be addressing with this staff report. So starting with the Marina Fund on the right, we can move to the next slide. The Marina Fund is an enterprise fund, so it is reliant on user charges. So it's different from the governmental fund, which raises taxes. The user fees, or in the case of the marina, it's basically the berth rentals and now the liveaboards that provide the majority of the revenue for the fund. So berth rentals are at 91%, and liveaboards are $400 a month, which is now 6% of the annual revenue coming in. The intent of the city is that the cost of providing the goods and services of this fund be financially financed primarily through the user charges. So the miscellaneous revenues is about 3%, and those include, we have some rent and concessions, small application and transfer fees, penalties, and some electricity that is charged through the Marina Fund. And next, I'm sorry, stay down here. On the expenses, the types of expenses that the marina has are salary and benefits, supplies and services. There's an administrative fee that it pays to the city government fund. The marina covers its own debt. There is one debt instrument right now covering for the marina. And then it also contributes to the motor vehicle replacement fund for any vehicles that are used for the marina. So we budgeted for 23, 1.9 million or 1,887,000. And then the expenses were budgeted at 1,805,000 for, and we call it net position because it is an enterprise fund. Some of the terminology is a little bit different. It acts like a business. So the net position was budgeted at 6.5 million, but the Marina Fund has restrictions, again, because of the debt and because of several capital expenses and other contracts. There are some restrictions on those funds, so what is truly available as of 22 was $917,000. Next slide. So the next slide is basically a breakdown of what the budgeted expenses are for the marina. 41% is related to personnel. Supplies and services is 21%, which includes some security and other types of services that they contract with. Again, the administrative fee is 10% of the expenses. That goes back to the city. 27% is the debt service that they have to pay every year. And then the vehicle fund transfer is pretty minimal at 1%. Moving to another fund that is covered in that area is the Sierra Point Lighting and Landscaping District. So this is a district that was formed in 1983 for the purpose of constructing, installing, maintaining, and servicing public space within said district. And it was proposed and maintained at an elevated image and service level in a sense where because we have taxpayers paying into it, it's a little bit like the lighting, some of the materials used are a little bit more elevated than what the general city is providing. So you'll see public landscaping, including trees, shrubs, other vegetation, irrigation facilities, and then the lighting facilities include standards, poles, and electric current or energy. So the way this district is funded is every year there's a special assessment levied on the property owners within the district. So that goes through the San Mateo County tax assessor. And so with the property taxes, they'll get the bills. And so those funds come in twice a year, similar calendar as regular property taxes. The parcels pay for maintenance by square foot and proportionate to some of the expected benefits that they receive. So there was a budget revenue of $590,000 and the expenses were budgeted at $455,000. In the staff report, we did show a 5-year history, which included the actual and the budget as listed on your screen right now, and just wanted to make sure that we reiterate that any funds that are left or if the revenue exceeds the budget, those funds are can be rolled forward or used for other projects. And so some of the planning that the department that monitors this district is in Public Works. And so they may have projects that are a little bit more long-term. So they're putting that money aside, knowing that in advance that they're going to be paying for something down the line. So that is why you may see a difference between the revenue and expenses. And then also there was a dip during COVID year, just because there was certain activities that weren't happening. And then for other staffing reasons, that there were some projects that weren't able to be completed during some of those years. And then now they're going to be picking up in the current and future years. So any overage of revenue over expenses are carried in the fund balance and normally used towards projects that may span over several budget years or capital improvement projects. Moving to the next slide. So the last area that we have that we're in the Sierra Point is the city-owned property. And part of that area is what is known as Parcel R. And so that parcel was actually being leased to a developer. And take that back. So I apologize I want to make sure I get this straight. There was a lease agreement and the developer was to build some facilities there, and it turned out they were also building facilities on the western side of the Sierra Point area. And back in 2017, that agreement was restructured so that the developer repurposed the plan. And so they terminated the lease in that Parcel R in order for that developer to build out more in the other area of 3,500 Marina Boulevard. And part of the agreement was that the developer gave us $300,000 up front, and it was going to be used to make improvements on that Parcel R. And part of the agreement also requires the developer to pay into this fund every time they have a permit application of any type of build out for the rest of their property. And that's going to go specifically towards Parcel R to improve that area. We've also have another developer, Health Peak, that has contributed as part of their developer agreement, $1.5 million, but that's towards improvement over the entire area, not just one section. It's over that entire area. And so there have been some expenses incurred, some studies that are there. Some improvements included the improvement of the Marina picnic area. There is the Sierra Point Open Space and Park Master Plan that's been committed. And then there were some other smaller improvements that were made. So this fund now has a resulting fund balance as of 6/30/22 of $1,408,000. And with that, I'll take questions.
Council questions? Who would like to go first? Anyone?
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Carolina, thank you for the update. Just kind of, I know this has been, just trying to get an understanding of where these funds are like how they were created and what's in them and how the money can be spent. And so, I'd just like to get a little bit more clarification. So, it's been a while since we've gotten kind of an update on the expense to have a boat at the Marina. our slips, what, do you have any idea of like the cost for a slip in Marina, how it compares to other marinas and say in the area? Because I know they're different. Everyone wants to be as close to the Golden Gate Bridge as possible, and that dictates, costs and things like that, but also amenities as well. So
We're below the median right now.
below the median. Okay, so sorry to put you on the spot there, Randy, but our neighbor to the south, South City, right? Now I know they're doing work at the one marina, so I guess that one really doesn't count. But say the one that's next to the ferry. So
Correct.
yeah, so a slip there, a comparable slip at that location compared to one in Brisbane, what's the difference about?
I've got to be honest with you, I couldn't tell the direct cost between those two. I know where we are. I know that we're below the median. But again, as you try to compare those things, they're very, very different marinas.
Yes, I know.
And it's not just because it's next to construction. It's also because their marina is very, very much exposed to prevailing winds. So when a boat is tied up there, you're rocking and rolling through much of the evening. And with the construction going on next to them, with the shape of their slopes and piers, they have a very, very low occupancy rate. We have an incredibly high occupancy rate. I mean, we have been rocking in the high 80s for a long time. And recently there's been some work going on down at one of the marinas down south where they've had some problems with their electrical system. So I just saw the latest monthly report. We're up to 90% occupancy rate because we're taking in some of their tenants.
Okay. Well, and that's good for money coming in, because based upon what you've shown here, I mean, that's a major source of the money that is.
It's our only source.
I mean, you got the liverboards, right?
Well, right, but that's still
It's still
slip
people
tenants,
taking a slip. You're right.
You have to have a marina that people want to come to. And so
okay.
that's why we did the dredging project a number of years ago, because it was becoming untenable for our sailors, right? Their keels were getting caught in the sand at low tide. So we had to fix that. And even though, and part of the balance we look at too is that we don't have a lot of the amenities everybody does, right? I mean, we're not right next to a baseball stadium. Okay, we're not in the heart of San Francisco. We don't have a gas pump for those people who have fueled vehicles, or fueled vessels rather, right? And we don't have a hot dog stand on the shore. So we
no
try
one's
and balance all
hawking
those
to have
things
you,
together.
Get on my sailboat and let's go for a ride out in the bay.
I'm just delighted that we've been able to keep that at the sweet spot where it is. There are very, very few marinas that regularly have high 80% occupancy rates.
Okay, and I think that's great. But that's but having revenue coming in from this basically only source, it kind of put you in a position of like, okay, well, do I have this really high occupancy rate, and do I want to mess with it by increasing those rates? I mean, based upon your expert, experience in this, I mean, would it be acceptable to increase the rates in order to address some of these expenses that are out there?
So one of the things that the harbor master and I do biannually, and I mean twice a year, I don't mean semi-annually, is we go through and we do a survey and we see where the slip rates are with the other marinas, and we're due to do that this year. So we'll examine that later this year, and if we think that a rate increase is appropriate, we'll bring it back to council, because you have to take action on that.
Got it. Okay.
If I may, a little bit of historical knowledge on my part. We several years ago, we were having a dredging issue, and people couldn't get in and out, and the docks were starting to be a bit decrepit, and we were getting a lot of pushback by our tenants that we were going to lose the marina tenancy if we didn't do something. And when that happened, at that point, the marina was not an enterprise fund. It was part of Park and Rec. And there hadn't been for many years money that it wasn't self-supporting necessarily. And there was no mechanism to pay for the dredging. And so it was decided to do a bond issue and have the rates go up so that the current tenants rates went up on a schedule so that they were paying for the life of that dredging. And when the dredge is at the end of its life, we'll need to rebond to do the dredging and pass those rates on to the current tenants again. So instead of when the original tenants moved in, the dredging was already done, they weren't paying for that necessarily in inflated rates. They were taking advantage of that. And then when it came time to do it, we didn't have a mechanism to pay for it. So, right now, I think we have a lot of people from Oyster Point because they don't have electricity. They have no access to their boats. The Coast Guard boat is even in our marina because they're having to rebuild a lot of their electrical and other systems there at Coyote Point, and so they don't have access to their boats. And I think that if we were to go to full market rate for the area or area rate, we would be pressed upon by our boaters to have better bathroom facilities, to have
Laundry.
more reliable
Better laundry.
electrical and water and a lot of amenities that if it's sort of like looking at a Motel 6 or looking at a Hyatt. And if you're getting Hyatt rates, you expect Hyatt services. And because we don't have amenities as far as restaurants and shopping and shuttle and,
Location.
those kind of things, we are in a position to maximize what we do have. And for me and what I hear from the boaters is we have an ambiance and a supportive staff and fellow boaters that talk to each other. And that can be a double-edged sword for a management where, yes, they feel they're supported among themselves, but they also can get together and make their voices heard and ask for more if their rates are going up. So it is a double-edged sword on being, you don't want to be the cheapest one to get the dregs of society, but you also can't be the most expensive if you don't have the amenities. So.
Or comparable if you don't have the amenities.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So,
Yeah.
I think that what we've done, and besides the revenue, that it's an enterprise fund for the marina, it adds a intrinsic value to the entire Sierra Point development by having a beautiful marina instead of having a crap shoreline.
Mhm.
And so it brings a value to the rest of the properties that doesn't have a dollar sign to put next to it, that having the marina brings to Sierra Point development as a whole. And so while we have to treat it as a enterprise fund, I think there is also a beautification that helps the surrounding areas.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you on that, Terry. And yeah, I mean, the marina has, as far as, people from Brisbane and others from the area interacting with Sierra Point, the marina has always been a part of that feature, right? And it's always been a positive. And so, yeah, it's really in our best interest to work together, right, and understand the information so that we can make those best decisions, right, and find that balance. And so, yeah, I totally agree with you on that. So, Carolina, one of the things that Terry talked about was that, we didn't have an enterprise fund before and it just went into, I guess, the Park and Rec fund, right? So, but when we made that change, the council said, okay, the money that is taken in from the tenants, it stays with the marina. And money that would go to the city is to cover marina expenses. No other money that the city would take in that comes from the tenants goes to anything else.
Correct, because of the enterprise fund, it cannot go to the direction of the city's governmental funds and programs. It has to stay within that business enterprise.
Okay, no, and that's really, great to, have that understanding, because sometimes
It's very distinct. Yes.
you hear it like, oh, that's a cash cow for the city, and of course, we know that's not the case. So the debt service, so when will that be paid off? That, for the dredging and, so.
So it was issued in 2015, I believe. Yes, 2015. 20-year, I believe it was.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, like you go into, getting it. So I guess it was a bond, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Right. And so then the goal is to you pay off the bond and then you do the dredging again. Or do you foresee those two things marrying up with each other? We finish paying off this debt and then we go out and get another bond to do the future dredging, or are we going to have to do the dredging before this debt service is paid off?
I think the dredging question is, I'd have to read. Because the dredging could happen before your bond is
I'll jump in. I love the game of Stump the City Engineer.
Yeah.
It's always fun. I always enjoy this. So one of the things we do to try and analyze that, sir, is every 3 years we go out and we do a bathymetric survey. We have a vessel come out and see where we are. We're starting to get some indications that our approach channel has a few spots where we might need a little touch-up dredging, but nowhere on the order of the $3.5 million that we spent earlier. And the reason I can't give you a definitive answer on that is because the tides in the bay change. And then we have atmospheric rivers and bomb cyclones that throw all this water and the sediment associated with it. And then everything kind of swirls around. And I don't always know how it's going to swirl and where it's going to end up. So what we try and do, and the reason I really highly recommend we do it every 3 years, is I don't ever want to be in the position we were in when I took over the marina, where we were alerted to the fact of it because the tenants were upset. And the tenants were saying we're getting stuck. I think the city has responsibility to proactively go after that.
Yes.
That's what we're doing. Not a definitive answer for you, but
No,
it's where
that
we're
is
going.
that is really good because right, you don't know until you do that investigation, and better to be proactive instead of waiting until you get a complaint. Okay. So in regards to the revenues and the expenses, so now on to Sierra Point Lighting and Landscaping District. So is there any like time limit on spending that money, or that the money comes in and we can spend it when it's appropriate for our needs?
As long as it's used for, again, for the program and the maintenance and the purpose of that special revenue fund, it's there.
Okay, all right. And then the money that does come in, there could be the possibility where money is spent, and this is a yes or no, where it benefits users on the land as well as tenants who have boats in the marina, right? Like
well,
bathroom or
No, absolutely not. sir.
picnic,
No,
none of that.
no. So in the map that Carolina showed, there are very specific areas that are designating in the founding documents of the district that says, here's where you can spend this money on landscaping. And everywhere else it's within the boundaries of the district, you can spend money on lighting. But that's it. So the only way I would say that it benefits folks at the marina is that much of the areas that are covered are the entryways as you come into
off the parking
Sierra
lot.
Point. And so you're seeing, where a lot of the businesses have their monuments and such. So to the extent that having a pleasing entryway as you come out to Sierra Point is a benefit to the marina, much like having a very nice, a very accommodating, a very pleasant marina is a benefit to the businesses. I think they work together that way, but you can't mingle those funds. There's a hard boundary between those two, and you cannot cross those boundaries. They're both enterprise funds.
Okay, all right. I thought there was some overlap, but yeah, no, you got to be pretty strict.
Sure.
All right, then moving on to the I guess is under Park Development Fund, talking about parcel R. So phase 3, every time they issue a building permit for their project, right? So that's in that north,
The 3,000 of
northwest corner.
3,500
Okay,
Marina.
so we get 50 cents times the square footage, right? So how much have they contributed so far? This is phase 3. And once build out is completed, what will be that total amount?
That
Do
I'm
we
not
kinda know?
sure. I'd have to get back to you on that.
Actually, for some reason, I remember that.
It's like another 300,000, right?
It's
Approximately?
225,000
225.
Right on the
that we will get it built out.
Okay, cool. And then we've had the discussion about having park and rec impact fees, and even though say a lot of development could occur out at Cedar Point, could be the by far the majority of future development prior before the Baylands. That money though can be spent on any park and rec facility and things like that within the city. It doesn't have to stay out at Cedar Point, right? It doesn't have to be put back into the place where it was drawn from.
You're talking about future? Or?
Yes. Yeah. When the city hopefully approves that.
Well, I know part of it will depend on the developer agreements on for the impact.
Yeah, this is the fee that
Okay.
that Parks and Recreation Director is working on. Yeah, the idea is that it would be citywide.
Maybe citywide. Okay, great. And then just like how the city has negotiated in these 2 development agreements that are shown here in the staff report, the city, we have these 2 projects that have been submitted before the city. One is Health Peaks project to do the 2 towers and expand their garage, and then you have BDI's project for the hotel and the life science. Both those projects, eventually will have development agreements. So there's always those possibilities of generating future funds for things like this.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you very much. That's it.
Is there anyone wishing to ask questions on this item now? Okay, so you don't need direction, we're just accepting a review.
Just
right? So,
informational, right?
thank you. We'll now move on to item N, receive report.
Madam Mayor, I just wanted to note for the record, there's no
Oh,
public
thank
comment.
you, yes, public comment.
Thank you.
All right, no
Thank
public
you.
comment. So, receive report on Measure K funds from San Mateo County and provide directions to staff on next steps.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I recently met with our county supervisor, Dave Canepa. As you know, in the past, he has supported some projects in Brisbane through the Measure K funds. I believe each supervisor gets something in the neighborhood of $1 million a year to use in their district, pretty much at their discretion. So he has indicated to me that he is interested in a project in Brisbane in the neighborhood of 150,000 to 200,000. There would be a city match of some manner that would have to be discussed with him. It could be, I think, anywhere from 20% to probably 50%. He is interested in a physically enduring project or a capital project as opposed to supporting a program. And so that's kind of the parameters of what he's looking at. So tonight's item is really to ask the council how you would like to proceed. I put down 4 different approaches. There may be others that you want to consider. You could send it to a city council subcommittee that is existing. You could create a new city council ad hoc subcommittee. One or more of the city commissions that you have could take a look at it, or you could discuss it as a group.
Before we get into discussion, I just want to see if there are any questions specifically.
I think David reached out to all of us to talk about this. At least he did with me. He was, says, "Hey, I got this money," and he was very helpful providing funds for the modular.
Right,
Right.
exactly. My suggestion would be for us to agendize this. We have a list of capital improvement projects that we could look at. Staff might want to pull ones that are within this range. And I think that it will be pretty easy for us to take a look at that list and have one that rises to the top. The city, and then we would just need to confirm, and I'm assuming this is a yes, that we would be able to match 25 to 50% of whatever that cost would be. But that way I think we should all have the opportunity to weigh in. We'll provide that list. We already have something ongoing, and this is a pretty tight range. So I think it shouldn't be too difficult for us to come to some type of agreement on how we should spend that. But I'm amenable to other suggestions.
I think it's a really good idea personally to look at our existing capital improvement list so we're not out soliciting more suggestions on what we could do with money. And, find one of those, as the mayor says, to look at something. And that I think if we had a short list that was reviewed, that are technically shovel ready, it would be good.
Totally agree. We've got some, just off the top of my head, we've got
Stairway and
stairways,
yeah.
shelters, bus shelters, windbreaks, benches. That word keeps coming up in every meeting I go to. People want more places to sit and relax. There's 1,000 little projects I think we could all mull over pretty quickly. Plus, maybe staff have got a couple of things on the top of their head that be like, hey,
I'm trying to hold them back.
Yeah.
You can't stump me on that, ma'am. I definitely have a couple of
He's
projects.
only got
that are
125, I believe, Randy, right?
Wait, I wanted to have the council have the first crack at this stuff.
Gee, thanks.
I think you should bring it back to council with a
With the list.
recommendation, a short list of
Okay,
maybe 10 projects that we could throw darts at.
okay, very good.
And
Yes.
knowing that it's matching funds, something that's feasible for us to match.
Yeah.
Right.
And it could be something that we already had scheduled that maybe we want to expedite.
Right.
We've got plenty of things on the list.
I'll just tease the council in advance that we've been trying to replace the gas water heater at the pool, and we have a funding shortfall out there.
Oh,
So
yeah. We did talk about
do something that fits our climate action plan too. I don't know.
Exactly.
Just
We
a
would love
teaser
that.
for
Right.
future.
And it's a big community benefit.
Well, hence the reason I said I bet you've got 125 on your list.
Okay, so is that enough direction for staff? I
Yes,
assume so.
I'm-
All right, so we'll go ahead and move on to item O, consider city appointment to the Bay Area Water Supply and Conservation and Agency, BAWSCA, and Bay Area Regional Water System Financing Authority, RFA boards. And are you giving the report on this one, Randy?
Sure, ma'am.
Okay.
I'll give you a quick one. You've got the staff report in hand there, but a little history on it. Brisbane's in the unique position of we have two water districts. So we have the Guadalupe Valley Municipal Improvement District and the GVMID board, which happens to be the same five fine people that are the city council, have appointed me to that, and you reappointed me to that earlier this evening. So I've been on BAWSCA since it was formed circa 2003. As far as the city representative, the council has in past always appointed a city council member to it. So the first gentleman on it was Lee Panza, and then Cy Boligoff, rest his soul, and then lastly it was Seppi Richardson, now Seppi Wood. And when Seppi termed out and went off of the council continued to reappoint her as her terms expired. If you look at the makeup of the BAWSCA board, and I'm not very much as concerned about the Regional Financing Authority because that board hasn't really taken any actions. It's sort of an equal subset, just a financing arm of BAWSCA. There's 26 member agencies. 3 of those member agencies have engineers that represent them. So those agencies are GVMID with me. It's Cal Water, a private entity that is a member of BAWSCA, and it's Stanford University that has an engineer there. The remaining 23 all have an elected council member or an elected water board member that's on there. So I think that speaks to the importance of having that. I realize that that creates some conflict with the council because they meet on Thursday nights. They meet on Thursday nights 6 times a year. At present, there is an opportunity to participate telephonically in the board. Unfortunately, in this case, as I'm sure many of you were, because you're on all sorts of other commissions and committees and such, that many people are taking different approaches to it. And BAWSCA's approach is that they want people to be there, but if you can't, as long as you are within the boundaries of the entity that you are representing, and as long as you publicly notice where you're going to be, you can do it and you can sign in via phone. The BAWSCA board typically meets a start time of 6:30, and they have a hard stop at 9 p.m. because typically the places where we're at, they kick us out at 9 o'clock, but they don't have their own facility and such, so we have to be gone by 9. So that's the information I have for you if you have any questions. We have been bouncing back and forth between Burlingame and Foster City.
Like every year, every meeting?
It hasn't been consistent with, as we're coming out of COVID, I think we're still trying to find our place. And
Okay.
so I'd be happy to provide any additional information the council would like. I think really tonight, the only purpose of that staff report is just to give us guidance on staff, on who you would, how you would like us to help you find a member, or if you want to tell us to come back and give one of you as the member.
So are you looking for 2 representatives?
No, ma'am, just one.
Just one. You're already going to be their representative.
Yes, ma'am.
And then we're looking for one replacement representative to take the spot that Seppi
Exactly
Richardson
correct.
Woods
Exactly
had.
correct.
But you don't need that information from us tonight?
I do not. So the term, Ms. Wood has already put in her notice that she's going to resign, but as long as we get someone put on there prior to June 30th, which is when the term officially expires at BAWSCA, then we'll be fine.
So, go ahead.
Does because it conflicts with our meetings, which is why when we changed to Thursday nights instead of being on a different day of the week, it put us in conflict with certain agencies. For my information, is there anyone else on staff that would be recommended to accept this position? And perhaps we can get back to us, offline or, at a later date with that information. But I would be interested in seeing if there's someone that may want to do that as staff. I know that there's, a stipend that's associated with it.
I have another suggestion.
If that's the direction from council, I think we'll be happy to do that.
Okay, go ahead.
It may be cheaper for us since we already have a staff member there. I could see us appointing someone from maybe planning or OSEC. I think that we have a lot of really great, engaged planning or commissioners just in general. And I think that this might be an opportunity that one of them might jump at to have experience on another type of board.
That would be appropriate to appoint one of them?
I don't know. I mean, I think that they prefer for it to be a council member, right? But that's just not the circumstance that we're in. And we've had someone who's not been a council member serving in that role for a long time. So my guess would be that it's okay, right, to not have, because the alternative is you have one of us, but we never show up. So.
So I think what I would say, ma'am, is it would be the outlier if we were to appoint a non-elected official.
But we've been the outlier already.
No, well, I wouldn't say that, because if someone's been a council person, we have not been the only agency that has had a member that termed out, an elected official that termed out and then continued to represent their agency. I think there's a lot of value in having someone who understands the total dynamics of a city, particularly as you're going on to a regional board where you're expected to sort of take off your city hat and understand what's going on in the area. So, and as I'm talking about it, I'm not going to look to my right because I haven't discussed this, but I would think if you wanted to appoint a staff member, it would be someone more like a city manager that would be
But it
that
can't.
level would be appropriate, I think.
But we need Clay. I mean, we need our
He
city
needs to be
manager
there too. I know.
has
What am
to
I
be
saying?
at
I
our
can't help.
meetings.
I just
Has to be at
yeah.
our meeting.
I know. I know.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh,
Okay, I have a question, Randy.
Yes, ma'am.
You said that BAWSCA's considering remote meetings legitimate.
Yes, but yes, you can. Yes, you can telephone in.
Okay. I find that interesting because, you know, PCE has been working with Senator Becker to try to get this
Right.
law through. And we got an update at a PCE meeting recently, and it went to a committee. And the committee, there's a lot of very small cities in California were totally against it because they said, oh, we have people without internet. And it was suggested they could go to their city hall and watch meetings.
Yeah.
They didn't like that. So they added an amendment, which is critical. You have to live 40 miles away to qualify for attending remotely. And that's the way it's going to the rest of the legislature. So they just nixed
Oh my
everything
goodness.
for
Yeah.
PCE except
Yeah.
Los Banos.
Oh wow, I wasn't aware of that.
So I'm just passing that on to you because that's critical. It's changed the whole character of it. And BAWSCA, the governor has been very much, I'm told, against remote meetings.
was that prior to COVID? You were able to telephone in?
No.
Okay.
Only under the Brown Act rules where when you're on vacation and such. So if you're visiting Hawaii, you could do it.
Yeah.
What about
These are the
Stewart?
current Brown Act rules. Correct.
I say Stewart.
This is well, this is current.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Or
I
the
feel
old
like-
Brown Act rules still that stayed in existence.
It would make
I
sense
think
to me.
the level of immediate past employee that you talked about would be appropriate. I think it's the type of vision that we're looking for.
Yes.
It's really not to throw shade on any elected committee or commission member. It's just that someone has to have experience as to how it impacts across a huge area and across many, many different departmental concerns.
So, Randy, I'm just curious. Based upon the BAWSCA schedule, and then our schedule of meeting the first and the third Thursday, is every meeting a conflict?
It has been for me, yes.
Okay, because I know sometimes we don't see you, and it's like
That's
okay,
why
well,
I'm not here.
I guess you're not on the agenda.
It actually got easier for me during COVID because what was happening sometimes on Thursday nights was the Emergency Services Council meets on Thursday night down in Redwood City. And then BAWSCA was meeting in Foster City. And then we were meeting here. So I never got a speeding ticket, but probably just through the grace of God. Because the meetings were just bang, 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 bang. It's tough. As you well know, I think some of you are on other committees and such, we have to meet on Thursday. It's a challenge.
Okay, so then
We just deal with it.
Then based upon what you're saying, it sounds like you want to give us a recommendation for who within staff would be appropriate because of this.
I think I would really like to confer with the city manager before I did that.
Do I have to come to council meetings?
Yes. Could we just bring this back so maybe we will come up with some more ideas?
Well,
as
that's
well?
exactly what the staff report is asking you to do, ma'am. Just give us guidance where you want us to look, what you're thinking about, and then we'll try and put something together and bring you back an item where you would have an action to take.
I think it's difficult for us, Randy, to attend meetings. So the ball's
Yes,
in
sir.
your court now.
I get it. I certainly feel like I have enough guidance. I don't, boss, do you? Okay.
I don't, and I don't know that there are any past council members that necessarily would make sense. So, maybe you want to follow up with my idea, Clay. Just see. It's probably going to be an absolute immediate no, but we could
I know
hope.
what you mean.
Yeah, it probably will be, but just humor me.
Yeah.
Okay, so you'll bring it back
Profanity.
then?
Yes.
We have some time, right?
We got
Absolutely.
till the end of June.
Absolutely. We got enough meetings.
We're gonna get it, we need to get this in before our recess.
Yes.
So, okay.
Right. So we'll get that done. Sure.
Okay. So we'll now move on to staff reports, city manager's report on upcoming activities.
I don't have a report, but I did want to just have you meet Rose Viela, who's in the audience here. Rose is our senior management analyst. As Carolina noted, she helped out quite a bit on the Sierra Point report, and she's comes to us from the city of Millbrae, where she worked in the Public Works Department as an analyst, and she's going to be very much involved in our budget development this year. So you will see her during that season and on other projects as we go through the year.
All right. Welcome, Marina.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and move on to mayor council matters. And item Q, briefing on Senate Bill 423, and I believe this is a Tom report, city attorney report.
I'm sorry, I thought it was done in writing. I have to pull it back up. Apologize, everybody.
Well, it is done in writing, but
I didn't realize that it had,
It was
forgive me, I thought it was under the city manager's thing, but I didn't.
Okay.
So what Senator Wiener is doing, well, I won't editorialize. Senator Wiener is coming back and saying that SB 35 has had a positive impact on the development of affordable housing in the state, but that both the pandemic and other factors, sort of learning the law, learning how to deal with streamlining, other things like that, are now lessons learned, and it can have a much greater impact if we continue the buyer's remedy and other sort of incentives for local government to agree to housing on local terms before the state has to get involved. And what 423 does is it basically says that we're going to identify these other pieces of land that are within the state's influence. We're going to add those into SB 35, and we're going to continue the SB 35 experiment. What is not clear is what will happen because there's been so much press back on the buyer's remedy or developer's remedy, depending on how you word it, that it's not clear what will happen in the second house, but it is getting a great deal of attention. I know two of you had contacted me about it, which is what led to the staff report. Where it will go from here, I think if it gets to the governor's desk, he's likely to sign it. The question is, will it get to the governor's desk without major revisions in the assembly?
Does council have any questions regarding this?
is there any action that the council can take to remedy the outcome of this that you're asking us to do?
No, honestly, no. I'm not asking you to take a position for or against. It will not be helpful to the city to take the position we want to take. And by removing the sunset date and putting in some of the limited area that wasn't covered, I just think you know where this is headed. That unless the assembly steps in and says, we're going to mitigate this somewhat, I think we're going to have a debate on the month that's on the governor's desk, and I think that's when the city would weigh in if it gets there, depending on what it says at that point.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tom. We will move on to item R, Countywide assignments and subcommittee reports. I will give the report out on Public Art Advisory Committee at our meeting on April 17th. Danette Davis and Beth Grossman were given acknowledgement for being members of the Public Art Advisory Committee and for their commitment and contribution. They are no longer on the committee, so they were recognized for the time they had served. And then Park and Recreation Commissioner Greenlee was appointed as chair, and Camille Salmon is retained as the vice chair. Staff presented an RFP for the public art master plan. And there were minor changes made. The main change was including language around curation when a curator would be hired, and trying to look at requesting that whoever we hire in the public art master plan spell out guidelines around curation, when it's triggered, so on and so forth. And that's it. The May meeting was moved up to May 1st instead of May 15th to receive a presentation from Phase 3, who is ready to come to the committee with ideas about how they will use their public art, the money that they've triggered in public art from their development, how that will be spent, what type of art it will be, where it will be. And so they just came at public comment to ask that we meet sooner in order to hear a presentation from them.
All right.
Interesting.
That's
So-
cool. So they're going to do their art on site
Yes.
rather than the in lieu fee.
Right. And
Okay.
it's expected to be multiple pieces by 2 different artists.
All right, cool.
So we received the presentation because we had our next meeting at May 1st, but that report out is in the next council meeting. But we can get
That's
more details.
exciting. That's good.
Yeah. Anyone else? I don't have anything else on the list, but maybe somebody had a county meeting.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I had a Peninsula Clean Energy meeting, and I will just tell you briefly that the hot topic, it's been going on for 2 years, which is a procurement policy, because Peninsula Clean Energy is more than an energy company. It's all about providing really good careers and jobs in the energy field. And so there've been protracted meetings. PCE hired a consultant to come up with DEIA principles, which is diversity, equity, inclusion, and accountability. And then from that, it grew where labor got involved and wanted to meet with PCE about the policies that we have in engaging in contract negotiations. And sometimes it's in remote areas like San Bernardino, and there may not be labor there. So what efforts are we making in trying to promote apprenticeships for unskilled labor, addressing underserved populations to actually get a career? So this is ongoing, and it's really warped into something quite large, but most likely will be resolved in about 3 months. So it's quite interesting, and it's impressive because PCE stands behind the principles that they have. And I find that admirable. The second part, which is just very brief, is PCE also entered a contract recently for battery-only storage. It's a big project, and that's really hard to come by. So it's one more cog in the wheel towards having ways to store energy in those hours when the solar panels and the wind may not be generating. So that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. So we'll move on to written communications.
Madam Mayor, we received correspondence from Sangamo. It's a California WARN Act notice of mass layoff. And Leonard Cisneros regarding fentanyl homelessness in San Jose.
Thank you. Now on to oral communications number 2. Is there a member of the public wishing to speak at this time?
Madam Mayor, I see no raised hands.
Okay. I will now adjourn this meeting at 9:38 in memory of Dan Sorrentino.